Welcome everyone to week 5 of the Chosen Cherished Club. Meredith, you were welcoming everyone in, I take it?
Yeah, just saying hi.
Perfect.
The week of holidays in Panama that happens this time of year. So.
I think there's just a couple extra people in the waiting room. I'm gonna add them.
Okay.
1 more, 2 more. Yeah, it's always one of those things, like we've been on holiday, trying to be on holiday anyway, and power outages and whatnot, so it does get a little dicey, and tech-wise, you never know if things are gonna line up perfectly, but we're gonna keep my fingers crossed. I got the replay going over there, so that's great. How's everyone doing today with a thumbs up? And more importantly, can you guys hear me? Is the sound coming in? Yeah? Perfect.
You're good.
Awesome. Sweetheart, do you want to just mention why we added another week for next week too?
Yeah, for sure. These 5 weeks always just feel like they fly by, and somehow with Halloween hitting, I just sort of turned to Jonathan and I said, I can't believe it's already the end of 5 weeks. Feels like we haven't had quite enough time with this group. It's been such a big one and an engaged one, and we sometimes do a conflict resolution specialty workshop, and I said, I think we need the extra week. Let's just tack it on, put it at the end, so people who got a bit behind have that extra week to get through the material and bring their questions to the table, and address, Jonathan's got some sort of specific tips on conflict resolution and how to talk about that. And I just went, I'm not done. We need a bit more time.
Yeah, and so we kind of decided we would add the conflict resolution workshop. We're going to go over that, cover that again next week. And probably I'll pick and choose some of the stuff from the marital inventory as well that I want to cover. A lot of the stuff we've been talking about in the program now, but I think we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive then, which will be good. And yeah, so I think maybe what we can do, if anyone has questions, just remember to fire those off into the chat. I think that's probably the easiest. It definitely seemed to work the last few times, especially because I know a lot of people haven't really wanted to raise their hand as much throughout this process and our time together, and I totally get that. So I'm happy to more kind of just take it away. But if anything comes up that you guys are need clarification on this, or I have other questions, just fire it in the chat. Meredith will let me know. And sweetheart, you can turn your mic on anytime, just interrupt the flow. That helps.
I'll just say on that note, if anyone does feel comfortable speaking and wants to ask their question the way I am, just speaking out, please feel free. You could say, I've got a question in the chat, and then I can interrupt Jonathan at the right moment. I have learned how to kind of read his cadence and when I know he's wrapping up a story at that point. But also just, hand up in the video, we'll see you and we'll make sure we get to you, and you can feel free to speak directly back and forth as well.
Yeah, so that's great. So let's dive into it. So really this program, you guys have been learning a new language, and the way I view the work that I do is, and I was just explaining this to clients yesterday, it's really the oil that lubricates your language. It's kind of like you build that Ferrari engine, but if you don't put oil in it, it doesn't start. And so this is what we've been doing throughout this program. We've been looking at cultivating what we want and asking for more of what we want and getting more of what we want, not the stuff that we don't want. So it's meant to be radically different than traditional couples therapy. It's meant to be different than regular approaches. And the reason for that is to keep your creativity, your imagination, your problem solving happening in your mind, keeping those higher faculties open and working at optimum speed instead of blunting them and shutting them down. And so week 5, we're kind of pulling it all together and we're wrapping a bunch of stuff up. And week 2, if you guys remember, I've asked you what's been better since the last time we met. And so that's not an accident, that question. It's a question that's meant to look at your previous week in your relationship with yourself. You could do it with work, you could do it with your golf game, whatever it is. What's been better since the last time I asked this question, basically? And here in week 5, we're really kind of asking that question just in a slightly different way. The homework was, when was the last time? And so we're looking for the last time I felt good here, or the last time that I felt like I was getting what I wanted. And chances are, and definitely I know in my own marriage, in my own relationship, 17 years strong, I like to look back at the core memories, and when I think of the core memories of my relationship, they're the positive ones. They're the ones that get stored in that hard, that internal hard drive, that memory bank in our head. The working memory, like the RAM, may just be some of the blips and the speed bumps and whatnot, but the core memories I'm looking to store in my relationship are the positive ones. And so Meredith and I do a really great job of letting go of the pain, letting go of the conflict, letting go of the disagreements as quickly as we can. And if any of you are a lawyer, or if you know a lawyer, they'll speak to you, they use the word material, as in, this evidence I'm presenting is either material to the case or is immaterial to the case, right? So it's a very common phrase for lawyers to use that term, material. And so when you're looking back over the last week, last month, last year, last 17 years of your relationship, what is material to your relationship? And that's basically what core memories do you want to have about your relationship that you want to internalize and draw upon and access and define ultimately your relationship by. So Meredith and I don't define our relationship by the hurts, the pains, and the disappointments. It's not that we've forgotten about them, it's just that we don't lend a lot of weight to them. They become less and less important. The aftertaste, the hangover, it doesn't last as long. And really, ultimately, that's the reverberation of the pain from those past experiences, those hurtful experiences. It's like it fades away. It doesn't remain as strong, and it becomes something that you don't forget, but it's not something that impacts your view of your relationship, as in the identity that you hold of the relationship in your own mind. So week 5, that first question, when was the last time, is a really important question, because it's when was the last time you truly felt the way you wanted to feel in your relationship? Or when was the last time you were intimate with your partner that was fulfilling, or that you got what you wanted? When was the last time you felt a strong sense of curiosity for one another? And so, because we're wrapping up at the end of next week, I want to leave you guys with this muscle memory, the automatic muscle memory of building an image of the relationship in your mind, but using the positive memories that are material to that image, not the negative memories that would be, in my view, immaterial to the image that you have of your relationship in your own mind. So as you guys ask that question, when was the last time you truly felt the way you wanted to feel, you're going to ask yourself that, but then I hope you're going to ask your partner that. And why that's even more powerful is because now they're essentially giving you a North Star of what you just need to go out and replicate. Like, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it great? That time that we went for a beach walk, or that time we went out for dinner, or do you remember how I went back to work after 10 years away, and my first day on the job, you sat down in the kitchen and said, tell me about your day. How was your first day at work, right? You're going back and you're hearing from them. They're going to recount to you exactly what you did or what was taking place in your relationship in that moment that led them to think that they were feeling the exact way that they truly wanted to feel. And again, you can fill in that blank. It can be, when was the last time you truly felt the way you wanted to feel? When was the last time you had intimacy in the way that felt comfortable and natural? When was the last time you felt connected? When was the last time you felt heard? Whatever it is, fill in the blank there. But the idea is that you're going back and you're asking, when was the last time I got what I wanted? And so, not only, again, because you got that North Star so that you're trading these stories with one another so that you go out and replicate them, but then now when you're on your own time, The second question you could be asking is, how can I get more of that? How can I get more of what I want? And it really boils down to recognizing in your relationship through week in, week out, when you're getting those moments happening that you really want to have happen. Does that make sense? It's a big, giant shift. Like every other couples therapist would sit you down and tell you, or ask you the question, tell me about the moments you didn't get what you wanted. When were the moments that you felt like you were disconnected, and let's process them and tell me how you felt about them. Well, I really don't know how helpful it would be for me to understand from Meredith how I hurt or upset her. It's going to give me a lot of context. It's going to be a better understanding of what was going on in her world when I caused that hurt or that disappointment. But it's not going to give me any North Star to do the opposite. And so we're all adults here. I would just as, rather than going through that whole timeline of processing pain just to get back to neutral, only to then have the North Star to go and replicate what I want, I would rather just jump to replicating what she wants or what I want, knowing that over time, that as that approach dominates your relationship, the need to process the hurts becomes less and less important. Because, when was the last time when someone gave you an authentic apology that you didn't respond by saying, well, you should feel terrible, but rather you responded with, oh, you know what, that's okay, I didn't show up the way I could have either. Like usually when you get that deep, authentic apology, the person receiving the apology then extends the olive branch in return and says, well, you know what, I could have done things differently, or, it wasn't that big of a deal, right? So again, we don't, obviously that deep, sincere, authentic apology is really important. So, add that. That's part of the conflict resolution workshop that we'll talk about next week. But, once you've extended that apology and it's landed, I always see apologies as you've got to land the plane, and it's got to be an apology that lands, one that doesn't leave any aftertaste in your partner's mouth anymore. And if you need to figure out whether or not your apology actually indeed landed, then just ask the question, did that apology land? And if it didn't, then your follow-up question is that WH question, how can I make that apology land? How could I make that feel more authentic, more genuine, something that you're willing to accept? And so I would just as soon as jump to the apology when there's that moment of disconnection, and then go from there to asking, how do we create and cultivate more of what we want, as opposed to try to process that original hurt in the first place. Because you'll be here for a really long time, right? Which is good for those couples therapists that need to pay their bills and have you coming back next week. But it's not going to speed up your relationship and the repair and the connection you guys are looking for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. And like Jonathan and I have not always been able to do this. I mean, the early years of our marriage, very briefly, our story is like we met on our second date. Jonathan decided in his head, I'm going to marry this girl. And 10 months later to the day, we got married. Like our courtship was very short. He proposed after 3 months. My best friend is a teacher, so it was either get married 6 months later in the summer or like a year and a half later in the summer. And so we just said, oh, let's do this. I'm an event planner. I can pull a wedding off in 6 months. Let's go. And so we did. But then those first couple years of marriage, there were moments of like, holy shit, what have I done? Like, who is this person? Who did I marry? As you get to like know them. And so we went through some really tough times, moments on the brink, seeing a couples therapist. But it really was only like really once Jonathan went back and did this training and learned so much about it and brought all these ideas into the marriage that I feel like we fully were able to let go of early fights, early things that were quite intense, and move past them and move beyond them. But it was like we just kept cycling back through them, and we never fully were able to like let go and let them be in the past. And it's not easy.
And I would still say that those core wounds, those deep hurts, they still need to be dealt with. Like, just because I say, let's ignore the past hurts and jump into the North Star and the la la land, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to forget the past and forget that the deep core wounds happened. So they still need to happen, and the processing of that still needs to take place. But even if I'm telling you to not focus on trying to process why those hurt in the first place, you're still going to do it. So I'm fully aware of that, but I'm just trying to get you more, if 10, 15, 20% of the time you're looking at how do I get more of what we want, when was the last time we felt the way we wanted in our relationship, and let's spend some time focusing on that. If you haven't done that for years, maybe decades, and you're not allocating any time in your relationship to talk about when was the last time we felt the way we wanted to feel, because 95%, 99% of the clients I work with, when I ask them to tell me a story about their relationship, will automatically jump to the moments when they didn't feel like they were getting what they wanted. So you're going to do that anyway. I'm just hoping I can tip the scales and get you guys doing that 10, 20% of the time, right? So that's why I really like that question. And that is, to me, the proper check-in question. You know how they talk about relationship check-ins? Let's do a check-in once a week. No one likes them because they're just check-ins about what's wrong, right? Well, if you can have a check-in about what's wrong, you should be able to have a check-in about what's right. Go ahead. Oh, I think Meredith just left, but anyway. So next time that you're considering having a relationship check-in, try to flip it and reverse it from not checking in about what isn't working and start checking in about what is working. So, how was that for you guys? Was that pretty straightforward? Now, if you guys, I used to be in retail, so in when I owned a bunch of stores and then I went on to manage giant grocery stores, we have a saying in retail's detail. It's all about the details, right? And I would say hotel experiences are the same. It's all about the small details in the experience. So it's not enough to just tell you guys to ask each other, when did that feel great? When did you feel like you got what you wanted? The problem is that if you guys answer that way, you're going to be speaking too much in terms of your feelings, and you're going to be speaking too much in vague concepts. The issue, though, is that vague concepts and feelings don't give you a very clear North Star. So when you ask that question, when did we feel good? When was the last time we felt connected? You really need to spend a lot of time getting into the details of what was going on in that moment. What room were you in when you felt connected? What clothes were you wearing, right? Did the kiss on the cheek happen on the left cheek or the right cheek? Did you go for a walk, the city path to get to the waterfront, which is Meredith and I do sometimes, or do you take the back route? Like, what I'm trying to do is it's almost meditative or trance-like. Actually, a lot of people, the theoretical background that I use for the work that I do is called solution-focused brief therapy, and it's very much getting into the details of what's happening, almost in a trance meditative state. Because what's missing when we stay in these vague concepts of feelings, we're missing these all-important clues. Like, what was your body language like? What were your shoulders doing? How were you angled towards one another? A big realization Meredith and I had was we would fight, and I would stare up at the ceiling laying on my back, and she would lay beside me staring at the side of my face, and she always knew when I was ready to reconnect, because I would finally roll over and look her in the face, look her in the eyes, right? So now what we've done, sorry?
Well, it did drive me crazy once I really realized. For years, it would set up this unequal dynamic of me being the one trying to engage, and he's staring up at the ceiling. And it took time for us to realize, and Jonathan, you got a lot better at bringing physicality in, a touch on the shoulder, or making that eye contact. Even when you didn't want to and you were still angry, it was reaching out for that physical thing. I see you mention that in your posts and you're writing a lot, and it really worked for us. It's just emotionally, I might still not be over whatever just happened, but like, I'm gonna touch you on the shoulder, or I'm gonna like, you know, just like do some little thing, and it's like, okay, we are still connected. Okay, we can both let our guard down a bit. So.
Well, on that note, and so where I was going to go with that is that there's always gas in the tank to fake it till you make it. So you can pause the conflict long enough to fake it till you make it. So what I was doing in those moments, sweetheart, was I was basically telling myself, Jonathan, turn over and face her. Even though I wasn't in my mind ready to look her in the eye, I did that, and then I became ready to look her in the eye because I was already looking her in the eye. So that's that fake it till you make it. And on that physical touch, and that's why that second question, what would you see, touch, taste, smell, hear, feel, physically, not emotionally? These are all clues as to what we do well to reconnect, all clues as to what we do well to make intimacy happen, right? Like, let's say you're struggling with intimacy. What was the 30 minutes before you attempted intimacy that made it feel natural and good to actually want to be intimate? And so people don't understand that all you have to do is recreate the exact, if something worked well, why wouldn't you replicate it? Why wouldn't you do it again, verbatim? Like, all of us love that one restaurant that we seem to always gravitate towards. And why do we always go back to the same restaurant? Because we like the food. Or maybe we like the service. So if it's working to go back to the same restaurant, then what you want to do is you want to recreate the exact same circumstances that led you to feel connected, intimate, whatever it is, whatever that goal is that you guys are looking for, right? So you're always looking to do more of what works, replicate what works, and do less of what doesn't. And I just think, in going back to my background in retail, the more vivid and detailed you can make it, the easier it is to pinpoint exactly what you did to create that connection in the first place, right? It's always about having that North Star so that you can just do more of it. Now remember, the North Star is never what you did wrong or never what you didn't get or what you didn't want. The North Star is always what you want, right? So you're building rich descriptions with your partner. The two of you are talking about when was the last time we got what we wanted? What did we do to make it happen? And how can we replicate it again so we can get more of it? It's really that simple. So it's meant to be that simple, because if it's too complicated, you would lose steam for it. So there's two. So in the homework for week 5, you've got those 3 questions. When was the last time you truly felt the way you wanted to feel in your relationship? What was going on in that moment? What did you see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, and vice versa? So you guys are going to do that, and I would recommend answering those questions individually, and then having a conversation. Now, the only thing is, when you talk about what was going on in that moment, if you go all the way throughout my program, you're not allowed to talk about what they're not doing. You're not on your phone, and that's why I felt connected to you. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. It just tells me what she wasn't or he wasn't doing, right? It's got to be in the affirmative. Oh, you were looking me in the eye, or we went for a walk, we were holding hands, we hugged, we had a massage before being intimate, whatever it was. You asked me questions. You got to always be thinking in the affirmative. What were you doing? What weren't you doing? As you guys answer those questions. So that to me is solidifying the gains. So in week 1, we talked about what do you want, and then now here we are in week 5, building more and more examples and richer descriptions over the course of your relationship, and certainly over the course of the last 5 weeks. Tell me when you got what you wanted. So week 1, we started with what we wanted, and now week 5, we're talking about when did you get what you want, and how did you make it happen? So we're just solidifying progress. We're cementing new patterns, new cycles, new communication strategies, all of it, everything that works. We're building that muscle memory in our relationship, and that's what you want to aim for. Moving on to exercise 2, really talking about reflecting on the feelings behind your requests. Remember in week 1, I asked, what would it mean to you to get what you want? Right? So question number 1 is, what do you want? Question number 2 in week 1 was, how will you know you get what you want? Question number 3 is, what will it mean to you? That question, what will it mean to you, is really basically saying, as a business, I want a ton of revenue, but if I do it really well, what it'll mean to me is profit at the end of the day, right? We're all doing it for profit, all of us. We're all doing it out of self-interest, that we get something from it. And so I was just working with a client this morning, not in the group program, they're in my private program. And basically what he wanted was, he wanted to not feel shame and not feel judged, right? Well, in my language, that doesn't give me a North Star, because what do you want to feel like, a clown then? Do you want to feel like Superman then? You don't tell me what non-judgment, non-shame is. Well, I filled in the blanks with him, and I said, okay, clearly you want to be respected. You want to feel like you're a good man, right? So if he doesn't want shame and judgment, you could probably draw a pretty short line towards him feeling like a good man. She, on the other hand, wanted to feel like she was the only woman that lived or occupied real estate in his mind. She wanted to be the only one that he had attention for, no other women, right? So we've got 2 really profound messages here. She wants to know that she's the only one, which really by extension is she wants to know she's choosable. And he wants to know that he's a good man, right? So these are 2 extremely profound messages. Now, I could probably take 5 minutes with each of you, probably even less, and uncover some childhood wound that told you that you either weren't a good boy, a good man, that you weren't choosable, whether you weren't stayable. My childhood wound is I had a very insecure childhood, very physically abusive, neglectful relationship with my father. I felt and grew up feeling that I was leavable. And Meredith, on the other hand, grew up in an intact home, but her dad was emotionally on the spectrum. And so he essentially didn't pour that love into her, to the point where as kids, they would walk around their house thinking, if I don't walk and talk like the duck that dad wants me to walk and talk like, he won't love me for some reason, right? So she has this message, this wound, that she's not good enough, right? So here I walk around all day thinking I'm leavable. She walks around all day thinking she's not good enough. Well, what do you think the messages are that she and I wake up every single day sending each other? She wakes up every single day reminding me that I'm choosable and stayable, and I wake up every single day reminding her that she is good enough. Now, that's not the first thought that goes through my head, and I don't walk around eating, sleeping, drinking, making her feel like she's good enough, and vice versa. But I can tell you those messages I need to send my wife and that she needs to send me, they're never far from the hand. They're always there. They're always living in the background. So there's not a day that goes by that I don't think at some point, how can I remind Meredith that she's good enough? And there's not a day that goes by, I can guarantee you, where she doesn't remind me in some way that I'm choosable and stayable, right? So what we take from that is it guides your behavior when you truly understand this profound childhood wound that you've been sent into your partner's life to help heal. It's not your responsibility to heal the wound, but it's absolutely our responsibility to help our partner heal their wound. That's what a marriage is and a relationship. I can't make her feel good enough, but I can support her in her journey to heal that wound to feel good enough. She can't make me feel like I'm stayable, but it's absolutely in her, she signed up for it, life plan to remind me and help me feel like I'm stayable. And so typically what happens is couples, they don't ever get that far by expressing to one another, what's the feeling behind all of my requests? What am I really chasing? What do I really want to feel underneath all of my requests and all of my complaints? Because your complaints are really just the complaint about the opposite message that you're receiving that you don't want, or your complaints in your relationship are just simply talking about not getting the feeling that you do want.
And I just want to jump in because that might relate to a comment that just went in the chat a few minutes ago. If you want to take a minute, love, to just like read it fully, because it could be that what the one partner is asking for, they may need a little bit of work or some kind of help figuring out like what's underneath it. But if you want to just take a minute and see the latest one at the end of the chat, and if there's just something you might have to say about what to do if you made to feel like the trigger all the time, and if only they would back off or stay quiet or give some space that the healing could come. But it's hard because I know what you mean. And funnily enough, Jonathan and I sometimes are the opposite in that way. Like, he will I will be more the one to shut down or go quiet. Like I joke I'm like a cat. If I get hurt or I'm sick or anything, I just like hide away. Whereas Jonathan will need like to talk it out and keep talking and keep talking and keep staying in the moment until it's fully resolved. And we've learned to give each other a little bit more what we need. Like I can say, I'm just gonna go get a glass of water. I need to just like have a minute, and he'll give that to me now. Whereas in early days, he would literally interpret that as I'm leaving him. And now I understand that, right? Like leaving in the middle of a fight was like, I'm leaving him for life. And it's like, no, we both need to breathe. And so I get the idea of needing a little bit of quieter space, but there's a way, I think, to get that without having the partner feel like it's all them and they need it. There was something else I wanted to say on that, now I can't remember. But yeah, just that feeling of like being able to stay in it and talk it out without it being too overbearing on the other person.
Well, and I think to that person's comment about feeling like they're being blamed as the trigger, there's so many different ways I can attack that question. The first, remember how I taught you guys rather instead? So if your partner is accusing you of being the source of the problem, you would reverse them by saying, well, okay, I know what I did maybe have triggered you. In the negative direction, what could I do to trigger you in the positive direction? So that would be a very practical way to reverse that. So if I didn't trigger you in a negative way, but I triggered you in a positive way, what would I've said or done, right? So that's one very practical way. Another would be if whatever I had done had triggered you to feel not happy or not good or frustrated or angry. Another simple way to ask that question would be, how would you rather feel instead of being upset right now, hurt, angry? Help me build a description in my mind of how you want to feel and not how you don't want to feel. That's what the person on the receiving end of the accusation of of being the one that triggered could do, right? But I also don't want to blame that person because they've been accused of being the source of the trigger. I don't want to make it all out to be their problem, because on the flip side, the person doing the accusing that someone's triggering them, that their partner's triggered them, have they done anything to express what they want instead? Or have they led with vulnerability? See, a lot of people will come out with swords and shields and guns blazing when they're not getting what they want, and then that's the only feedback you get from them. So like, you can't walk around in your relationship and only receive feedback on the things you've done poorly or how you've shown up in a way that they didn't want you to show up. The scale has got to tip back in a fairness balance, right? So it would be incumbent upon them to tell you, how are you showing up that triggers me in this beautiful positive way? Like if we could spend over the course of our relationship 80% of the time talking about how you hurt me, and we rarely talk about how you make me feel great, well, I think we need to, up the numbers on the other half and say, start giving me feedback on what's working here, what we're doing well. Because chances are, in my interpretation of that, is that someone's locked too much into their own pain and they really haven't tapped into what this question in this week's homework is all about, which is what is that vulnerable wound feeling that you're looking for deep down underneath that you're not leading with, but rather you're leading with accusations, pain, resentment, anger, frustration, because your partner can't read your mind and show up in your life in the way that you want them to show up, right? So even when that person's saying, why are you always on your phone? Or why do you have to check out and go golfing on the weekend and just rearrange plans, or whatever it is, they're not giving you an alternate reality of what you could be doing or what you're doing well. They're just giving you feedback on the pain that they're feeling. But what they need to really be doing is being open and honest about what they're looking for instead, which is this question, what feeling are they really chasing, right? And then when you can get into a really good conversation about what that looks like, whether that's to feel secure, thought of, reassured, whatever it is, choosable, that you're stayable, that you're tetherable is another word I use. Whatever those words are and those feelings are, it's incumbent upon them to really share that this is what I want, so you guys can know what to do to replicate that and to bring more of that into your relationship. So that's how I would reverse them, not in a negative way. I don't mean to say you're reversing someone to make them feel bad, but that's how I would reverse that conversation, to say, great, thank you for sharing that I've triggered you in this negative way. Can we pause that pain for a moment and just flip the script for a couple minutes so I can find out what you're looking for instead, so that I know how to give you more of what you want. And again, that the follow-up question to that is, how would you know? So how are you going to find out that you've got this? And I talk about it as that tip of the iceberg, right? So the feelings that they're leading with, especially the ones where they're talking about complaining or feeling triggered or whatever, they're leading with the surface level action that you did that caused them to feel that way, or they're leading with that surface level safe emotion of pain, anger, frustration, resentment, because that's easily accessible. No one's really emotionally in love with their own anger or their own frustration. But we're all deeply emotionally in love with this idea that I want to be chosen, I want to be cherished, I want to be thought of as someone who is the only person that could occupy my wife's or my husband's mind, right? We all love those, but those are scary to admit to our partner. So on that surface level, we want to lead with, I want you to call me, I want you to think of me, I want you to see me, I want you to hear me. But then you've got to understand, what does all of that mean when you get that? So we're going back to week 1 to make sure that we've solidified these gains, so that we're communicating. I want to, rather than me complaining that Meredith, when we go to a party and she goes and runs and chats with everyone at the party and leaves me for 2 hours, rather than me thinking she's rejecting me and she doesn't want me and she must want all these other people, which was a scenario 16 years ago, instead, now I'm going to say to her as we walk into the party, hey, sweetheart, I don't love small talk. I hate it. I hate when you're not around me, but do you mind just checking in every 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the party, come give me a hug, so that it gives me an out if I don't want to talk to someone. It reminds me that at least there's one person here at this party I want close to me, which is my wife. And then I can feel good because it just reminds me of she's connected to me, which is what I want, right?
And you talk about that muscle memory, and it's just funny because just last night we hosted a potluck at our surf lodge. It's something we started doing when we first moved here. We were meeting all these new people and we wanted to get to know them better, and we've always loved hosting dinner parties and things together. So we started this tradition here. Everyone brings something, so it's not all on us to host this giant dinner party. And we just, very casual, everyone hangs out. And so we had one last night. We haven't had one in ages. And I mean, I must have left Jonathan alone in the kitchen for like an hour. And I was catching up with one girlfriend that I hadn't seen in so long. We had so much to talk about. And then I was caught in another group of women, catching up with them, and then talking to a couple of Jonathan's buddies about what they were up to. And finally, I made it back to the kitchen. And our friend Laura was in there helping him. And she's a great chef. And I jokingly said something like, "Oh, Laura, you took my place, thank you," and went up and checked in with him. But like, I can tell you 10 years ago, by that point, in a party, having gone that long without checking in with him, you might very well have been upset by then. But it's like my muscle memory kicked in. I'm like, haven't checked in with Jonathan. I really should go and just like give him a kiss, check in, see how he's doing. But I feel like, love, your muscle memory also has gotten a lot stronger, where like you knew where I was, you know, back in your mind. And when I did come up, there was zero tension. Whereas I feel like 10 years ago, I would have come into like you being like annoyed that I hadn't checked in. So as you do these little micro moments where like I've gotten better at giving him those hugs, at checking in, eye contact across the room, watching out for those moments of him being like, God rescue me from this like atrocious conversation. I've gotten better at watching out for that while I'm doing my golden retriever chat with everybody thing. And he's gotten better at knowing I'm there, I am thinking of him, I am gonna check in. It just might take a little longer than he'd like because I'm caught in so many things. So,
it just gets easier and easier the more that you focus on it. But you gotta remember to go back to that childhood wound that really is personal and vulnerable. And really, whatever that is that you're looking to heal throughout life. And really that kind of ties into the second question: how will you know when it feels safe and comfortable to ask for what you want? Like if Meredith wants to know that she's good enough, it's really going to be incumbent upon her to actually tell me, "Sweetheart, can you remind me that I'm good enough?" Right? Like she has a very difficult time when we have a fight saying sorry. Like she really draws it out. Whereas I'll say sorry for stuff I don't even know I said or did, right? I don't have an issue with that. She takes a lot longer to get there. But then what it really comes down to is, how do you guys create a relationship in which you're not looking for this vague concept of, I want to feel safe in my relationship. It's too vague. I want to feel safe to ask you for what I want, right? So you got to extend that out. How do you know you feel safe and secure asking your partner to come to you and remind you that you're stayable, right? Or that you're good enough, or that you're choosable, whatever it is. You want to embark on a conversation with them and say, how can we build safety and comfort knowing that both of us have these core childhood wounds that we need help healing, and I want to be able to feel safe and good enough to come and talk to you about it and ask for it any single time I want. And the example I use is, children, they talk about what they want. My eldest wants a horse, my youngest wants a wiener dog. I don't know when they're getting them, if they're gonna get them from me, but I definitely want to have a culture in our home where our kids and my wife and me, where all of us can ask for what we want. And that is the North Star. Were you going to say something?
Well, there's a good question in the chat. I'm going to summarize it, and feel free to jump in if I've gotten it wrong. But basically the idea that it's one thing to know theoretically what you should do in a situation, or what the script you should say. And I hear you on this one, because I'm really good at knowing what should happen. But then in the moment, like the old scripts kick in, or the old instincts kick in, and you end up doing the same thing that you always do. And trust me, poor Jonathan will tell you, if he could snap his fingers and change anything, it would be that initial defensive response I have when I do something, I screw up, and it might be tiny, super tiny, or I don't even think I really screwed up, but he's upset about something. And instead of kind of going, oh, mea culpa, yeah, you're right, I did. It's like, I feel my dad in the room, that he's going to stop loving me if I admit that I did this thing. And poor Jonathan, it can take me time to be like, yeah, sorry, you're right, I did do this. And so I have the same problem sometimes. It's like falling back on these old instincts and scripts. Do you have anything to say, love, about how you can keep pushing through that and get to that other side where it becomes easier?
On that note, the reason why people don't say sorry is because they don't think they'll be forgiven. And that's ultimately why. And so what we hit on, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, where I finally said to you, you will be unconditionally forgiven by me for the rest of your life, right? I will love you unconditionally, no matter what you do. And so you got to understand that people have a very difficult time admitting fault because they feel like they're confessing to a sin about who they are and not a sin about what they said or did. And this is the simplest thing that couples need to really understand. When you're saying sorry, you're not saying sorry for you being a bad person. You're saying sorry for some stupid thing that you said or did. But all of us have jobs, and so if you go and do a performance review with your boss, you're going to get a ton of feedback of all the stupid stuff you did throughout the year. None of us go home and cry. We're like, oh, great, thank you for that feedback. I'm going to learn from that. Let me pull up my socks next year. You know, our boss is talking to us about our performance, not our identity. Right? They're talking to us about what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we could have done better, what we didn't do better. They're talking about our behavior, the things we say and do, not who we are. The problem is in our romantic relationship is that we always struggle thinking that if I did something wrong, I'm going to get slapped in the face for being a bad person. Well, that's not the way it works, right? You're just apologizing for your behavior, not your identity. So you really do well to compartmentalize those two. Now, the other thing too is that you want to build that culture of safety around, I love you for who you are. So going back to the person that said that they get accused for being the trigger of saying something, what that spouse in that moment should do is go to the person and say, I love you for who you are. I just don't like what you said or did. Like how, if you just started your fight with that sentence, like that would lower the temperature significantly. I love you indefinitely. You're an amazing person, a wonderful wife, a great husband, whatever. But you said something that hurt me. The problem is no one says that. They just start with, you said something that hurt me. And then you leave it to the partner on the receiving end of that feedback to fill in the blank. Oh, are they saying something about what I said or did? Or are they saying something about who I am? And 9 times out of 10, they'll get on the defensive thinking that you're upset with who they are, not with their behavior. So that's my antidote to conflict, and the starting of conflict and disconnection is to go and remind your partner, your spouse, your fiance, whatever, remind them that they are an amazing, incredible, wonderful person. You're just simply here to give them feedback on their performance like their boss would.
Right? There's 2 more questions, so I just, Joachim, you can like nod or raise your hand if you feel like that covered your question, but you know, the idea of like, okay, perfect, you know, how do you overcome those old scripts? But one just came in, love, also, it's sort of related, but on a bigger scale of if there's been infidelity, and in the past you've asked for what you wanted, to feel stable, to feel chosen, to feel wanted, but then if there's been infidelity, it's hard to ask for that and believe the response when the action in the past has been the opposite. How do you get past?
So infidelity is a big one, whether that's financial infidelity, physical infidelity, whatever it is. So there's 2 things that are going on here. There's when some type of infidelity happens, there has to be a path forward for both partners to get back to that good relationship. And the only way that'll happen is if the person who's been, whether it's cheated on or the trust has been destroyed for, that person is now on a journey of forgiveness. So they will have to forgive. And the person that had done the cheating has to grow and mature. And these are really difficult because a lot of people have a really difficult time with that forgiveness piece. To forgive someone who could cause such a deep hurt. And actually, it doesn't even matter if it's infidelity. It could be anything. Forgiveness has to be the cornerstone foundation of a relationship. And there's a reason why. And I don't ever believe you have to forget what happened, but I absolutely believe that to stay married or in a long-term relationship with someone who's hurt you that way, that forgiveness is a must, is because that person that had done the damage has to be made whole again. They have to believe that they can be seen by you as a good person again, despite what they did. Now, that breaks your brain a little bit, but people that have hurt someone, and because they've hurt someone in such a way, they will automatically have the lens turned on them by the person they hurt, their partner, friends and family, even themselves. People will talk very poorly about the person's morals, their beliefs, what type of person, such a cheater, a bad man, a bad woman. They're evil. I remembered when my sister cheated on my brother-in-law, I called her dark, like all these negative things, right? No one will stay in a marriage or in a relationship if they can't be seen by the person they're in a relationship with as a good person. They will leave and go find a new relationship with someone new that sees them as a good person. None of us can walk around, whether it's cheating, financial infidelity, whether neglect. I don't care what hurt you've caused your partner. If you can't be forgiven for those hurts that you caused, you will leave the relationship and go find someone who wasn't hurt by you, and that you could start fresh, but in their eyes, you will still be a good person to them, right? Which is why I say that path that the person who's been hurt is such a tremendously difficult path, because they've got to now forgive someone that had hurt them so badly. But this is kind of the most extreme example of separating someone's identity from the things they've said or done, because you've still got to see them as a good person on the inside, but a good person that could cause this much pain to you. So it's incredibly hard, and I would not ever say that it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely know that it's necessary. But on the flip side of that, boy, that person that caused that hurt better never cause another hurt like that again. Like, that is flat out 100%. Slap me once, shame on you. Slap me twice, shame on me. Like, if someone is seeking forgiveness, that behavior can never happen again. And if it does, I still sincerely think you can forgive them for that behavior happening again, but I wouldn't advise staying in the relationship, right? I think we can forgive everyone. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to do business with them, right? So, but that's why that person who did the hurting, the cheating, the infidelity, whatever it is, they've got to go through a sincere coming to Jesus moment where they look themselves and they say, I'm leaving behind this old identity and I'm going to become that good person that I'm expecting my wife or my husband to forgive. And I'm going to show up radically different in my relationship. So that's really the forgiveness process that I see when it comes to things like infidelity, but it's really for any and all hurts that are caused by partners in a relationship. So there's always two journeys. One is a journey of forgiveness, which is incredibly hard. One is a journey of growth by the person that had done the hurting, which is also incredibly hard. But I absolutely wouldn't be in this business if I didn't think those things could happen. But they are hard nonetheless. So.
And I just want to say, I'm having an aha moment, even like on this call, because I've always struggled my whole life to like understand, what does processing even mean, and what does forgiveness even look like? Like, I've done things to you, Jonathan, that I know were hard to forgive. We know like the big story of like one of the things you did to me that was really hard to forgive, but putting it in the context or like explaining it of like, you have to learn to see them as a good person. I feel like for the first time in 45 years, someone actually explained what forgiveness looks like in a concrete way, as opposed to just this vague, oh, you got to forgive them. Yeah, but what does that mean, and how do I do that? Mm-hmm. I always get caught sometimes with therapy, coaching stuff. People say all these things. I'm like, well, that sounds great. I'll process my childhood wound, but what does it actually What you do. I'm pretty practical that way. So I think that's actually a really great way to see it. You have to see them as a good person again.
Yeah, it's now the other thing too, though, on that note, though, think of our children, though. It is so easy for us to see our kids as good people. Like, I've seen parents that have loved their kid who had actually murdered someone, right? Like, think of how easy this is with our own blood and flesh and blood, but it's so hard to forgive and see our spouse as a good person, despite the hurts they've caused. So anyway, the last two questions are actually going to be great for the conflict resolution. The last two parts of the homework about shortening conflict. So we'll cover that next week, I think.
And you know what, that's actually a great point, because Courtney put in a really, like a long note. I've copied it so we can keep it for the conflict resolution workshop, about when apologies, it goes back to at the beginning of the call, when an apology really isn't landing. You know, if someone's saying all these things, and for the person receiving it, like it's not hitting home. And so I've copied it so you can like review it and digest it. There's a lot in there, but I think we can take that, Courtney, and talk about it at the next one. And we'll talk about the timing of things as well that you brought up.
Perfect. Well, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we will see you here same time next week. Sorry about the time change last week. It was a little bit crazy, but I'm glad that we all made it here today, so that's great. So.
And if there's any other questions, please send us the email so that we can really cover it on the call next week. And,
perfect.
Keep moving through.
Love it, guys. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful end of your week, and I will see you next week.